What is melody?
Hi, I'm Richard Niles with the second part of What is Melody?
Is it the tune?
Tonight we're going to ask, and how do you write one anyway?
What is melody? Is it just the
I've been around the world, and I've been getting tips from the hit makers and heartbreakers of pop, classical, and jazz. So if you want to know the answer,
ask Richard Niles.
well, if you ask Richard Niles, you should do what I did and ask hit songwriter Terry Britton. The writer of smash hits for Michael Jackson and Cliff Richard took time off from tuning his ukulele to tell me how he wrote the smash hit, What's Love Got to Do With It, for Tina Turner.
What's love got to do with it? What's love but a second-hand emotion? What's love got to do with it? Who needs a heart when a heart can be broken?
A friend of ours, Billy Livesey, suggested that myself and Graham Lyle should get together sometime because we might hit it off. So he came down to my place. It was all a bit stiff. And then I had my drum machine sitting there, which was quite new at that time. So basically, I turned the drum machine on, put on boom, gung, gung, boom, pulled out an electric guitar, was tuned on open D, played a chord. Well, it's like you go into some trance state or something for the next few minutes. And then at the end of it, you go, well, that's rather good, isn't it? Literally half an hour later, the tune's all done. And we said, oh, that was a nice experience. Nice to see you, Graham. Maybe see you again one day. Where it comes from, it's a blessing. It really is.
To me, what's really hip about the melody of that tune, and the thing that makes it so catchy, is the unusualness of the chorus melody. Not only does it start on the second beat, which is so hip, number two, it has a whoa, whoa, whoa before it, which is always commercial, which introduces it. It's like, here comes the chorus, folks. And number three, it's got repetition, because you don't just say do with it, you say do with it afterwards. You got three really ear-catching things in that one little 2 bars of melody.
In fact, on the demo, the repeat is actually done by backing vocal. So it's, whoa, what's love? And the backing vocals, got to do with it, is actually sung by backing vocals.
What's love got to do with it?
But when Tina came to do the song, she naturally sang the two. So instead of being a background vocal thing, it became the lead melody.
What's love got to do with
So she sang both, whereas on the demo,
It's an answer. Well, thanks to Terry Britton for letting us use his demo for What's Love Got to Do With It. Now, the man who sleeps in a silk zoot suit, Kid Creole, told me how he composed his hit song, Annie, I'm Not Your Daddy, by combining different styles of music.
Annie, I'm Not Your Daddy, for instance. Interestingly enough, the rhythm is soca, as we all know. It's calypso. It's got that calypso guitar going through. It's got the calypso hi-hat, which was adapted by the disco world and turned into a disco hi-hat. But before it was a disco hi-hat, it was a calypso hi-hat. And then it was very percussive, lots of percussion, the congas and the bongos, the timbales. However, the melody was classical. Very classic melody, stolen probably from some old classical composition by Bach or Bartók or somebody. Who knows? But anyway, it was a very classical melody on top of a soca rhythm. I loved combining odd entities.
That's the Jaco Pastorius Big Band playing The Chicken, written by Pee Wee Ellis. Pee Wee combined his love of jazz with James Brown when he became his musical director and co-writer in 1967. Pee Wee also wrote an instrumental that has become a jazz standard called The Chicken.
I wrote it because bands like to play music with changes that are easy. It's a blues form with a twist. And the first twist is this. It's kind of fun changes to play on. And I've been proven right because every band in the world plays it.
It's fun to play.
It's fun to play.
That's Gary Burton, who is to the vibraphone what Genghis Khan is to pillaging. He told me more about how jazz guys write for themselves.
I think all the composers that I've become enamored of during my career have been strong on melody. And in particular, they each seem to have a unique melodic style of their own. And therein lies the big challenge, I think, for a jazz composer. We write short pieces. Instead of writing a long, developed piece that goes on for 20 minutes, we tend to write songs that last 1 minute and then become vehicles for improvisation. We play the song for 10 minutes, but really the composition itself is a short piece, and it has to have two kind of opposites going on. It needs to be somehow familiar feeling. If it's too unpredictable, we're not attracted to it. At the same time, it can't be so familiar and so predictable that there's nothing new and fresh. It has to be this balance between something different and yet something familiar. And all the great jazz composers seem to have a knack for capturing those two opposites in a short time frame, which then gives us a great vehicle for improvisation.
The very nice guitar virtuoso Martin Taylor told me he writes tunes to suit his particular style of playing too.
I've written a few tunes that have been kind of, if you pardon the pun, tailor-made for me. I found little sequences and harmonic progressions that I would like to play on, which I haven't found in other compositions. It's really nice. It's bespoke compositions. It's made to measure.
So, jazz composers tailor their tunes to suit their instrumental style. But what about singer-songwriters? Now, rising star Rosabella Gregory described how she writes her very melodic and very personal songs.
It's a song called Better Love. My hands just fell onto something comfortable. My comfort zone. Probably something inspired by the mood of the day. You know, you recognise this chord scheme. It goes around in a cycle. So I thought, there's something final about it, but there's also something sad, stroke melancholic, optimistic, goes back again. And there's an internal melody, you can hear it. Na, 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 na. So that's like an inside melody, a counterpoint to possibly another melody. But when I started singing, that was the melody I chose. Thank you for the times we had, for the good and the bad. Thought I'd grow old with you, tie the knot, see it through. At this point, I wanted to go somewhere else. Still so much to learn, the point of no return, back to the beginning, comes to soon. I don't want to search for years, breaking hearts, shedding tears. It's a very familiar theme. I'm sure we all recognise Rachmaninoff in there somewhere and a lot of jazz standards. But what I like about it is this comfort and the resignation that it knows it's got to go round. And what happened with the melody was it's got to be about knowing inevitably things move on. And then the thing that happens with me is I want change, I want to move to some different place. So the bridge sections are growing, building up the tension. Then there was a chorus. So I thought, well, we've got to go somewhere. And I need to feel that there's hope in this song. Again, you can hear it's all about life and personalisation of something, but I feel like it needs to be a resolution here, but one that sums up the sentiment of the song. Nothing ventured, nothing gained in pursuit of pleasure. We found pain, some things only hindsight can explain. Better love next time. And we're back here again. So the chorus was for me, it sums up what the song is about. The melody comes from, I don't know where it comes from. It just comes because it's the only thing that needs to happen at that time. You're nodding your head, you know what I mean? I didn't pick it. It picks itself. It says, please pick me out.
Another singer-songwriter, curly-haired young American rock sensation Ben Queller, said when he writes melodies, he keeps his tape recorder handy.
Just a penny on the train track, waiting for my judgment day.
The melody comes first for me. I'll start to sing words, just nonsense. Just let it flow, freestyle the words. And I'm not really thinking about what I'm saying. And hopefully I have one of these tape recorders going at that time. Usually I don't, but I try to make it a habit. I just got one of these hard disc recorders, and it holds like 1 gig. So I have a lot of little snippets of ideas. So I usually sit down at the piano or hold the guitar, press record on that, and just let something flow. And I do that a few times a day, and maybe every other day I'll get something that's actually really good, and I try to build on it, and that's when the puzzle pieces appear.
Talented young Brazilian classical and jazz composer Clarice Assad also begins by letting things flow.
I began improvising everything at first and see what works best, because I go back to it after I record myself and put pieces together pretty much like a puzzle. And sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. I am working on a song cycle right now. Song cycles usually come from the classical world, but I'm doing an entire jazz/pop song cycle right now, all about different stages of a romantic relationship from beginning to end and everything in between. So it tells a story. And every song has to do with different sensations and feelings that we have during our relationships, or, being with somebody or not. And there's a I Hate You song, and that's a really like fast bebop kind of tune. It goes... I love him so, even though I know we can't pass a day without having our say. A simple question about a Christmas tree, and suddenly we're in World War III. How can it be? Baby, cannot be. What happened to you and me? So, it tells a story.
British composer and bassist Yannick Wisdala has made a serious dent in the New York scene since he arrived 7 years ago. I asked him to sit at the piano to demonstrate how he writes using motifs, small cells of melody from which his pieces evolve. Here's Time Stands Still.
The whole tune basically centers around this one melodic phrase, which moves around and has a counter melody and a descending bass line to accompany it. And then in the second half of the tune, it gets developed where I just take the same and then just expound upon it. And develop it a little bit more. And again, and then we branch completely into some completely unrelated material.
Well, yes, a little blues lick for the masses.
Well, I think the repetition of the two-note phrase and repetition in general helps to install the melody in a listener's ear and hopefully makes it a recurring theme for them.
Mark Isham put down his trumpet to tell me how he writes melodies for his fine scores for such films as Crash, Bobby, and this theme from The Black Dahlia.
I do think I have a particular approach to melody, the simplest description of which would be less is more. I tend to try to write quite simply. I think for film music especially, you don't always have a lot of time to communicate a melody to an audience, to communicate any musical idea, and therefore brevity will get you a long distance emotionally. You also need to be able to repeat a melody throughout an entire course of a movie as the score develops, and therefore if you can establish what your melodic idea is quickly, when you refer back to it, that's a great tool to be able to refer back to have something evolving emotionally for an audience. And therefore if you have established something in a few seconds, referring back to it becomes much easier than if it takes, a minute and a half to actually state what you've been trying to state. You may never get another chance to refer back to something of that complexity. I think most emotional communication has its basis in harmony. The obvious major chord is happy, minor chord is sad, diminished chord is questioning, augmented chord is ambivalent. A melody, of course, can imply harmony. But you have other tools in melody, too. You have the range of it, you have the motion of it, the speed of it, the juxtaposition of slow versus fast. You have three notes that go very quickly and then stop. You have a tremendous number of these things that all can impact. I think, again, just trying to say some basics, if you have a wide jump of a major sixth, this can be a romantic tool. And again, you could get in there and qualify this intellectually. At the end of the day, it becomes an instinctive artistic decision as to what fine points you're refining to get a particular result. The sequence of events for me can be slightly different in the very beginning. It really depends on the stage that I'm brought in. I like to be brought in somewhat early, which means I may read a script first. If I have a previous working relationship with the director, I may very well be hired even before the script. I say, you're my guy, here's my next film. I'll get picture as soon as the director's happy with the pictures, communicating to those of us who have experience with unfinished pictures that he's happy that he's got something going. So that initial startup can be different depending on those elements. I really only start for real once I have something to look at. I really do respond to image as much as I do story. The way a director has shot a picture can have a tremendous amount to do with the way I might score a picture. I'm a child of the modern age. I work completely on computer. I work interactively with my computer and my video system so that I'll write some music, put it in the system, and then move 3 feet back and push play and become the first audience to interact and to react to what I've done. And it's a back and forth. It's back and forth. I'll say, well, that is terrible except for those 6 beats right there, that bar and a half right there. There's something in there. So I'll look at that and find out, well, what is that? Well, you know what? It's that melodic thing. It's that jump of a major sixth that makes me believe that he loves her. I may rewrite it based on that until I get to the point where I push the button, sit back, watch it, and go, ooh, that's good. And if I'm convinced that I've done something that I like, I'm usually the toughest critic. Then I'm willing to stand up in front of others and say, here it is.
Still in sunny Hollywood, where the price of gas is confusingly about a third of what we pay in Britain, I spoke to another mega successful film composer, Christopher Young, composer of Spider-Man 3. His office was full of very scary pumpkins, and this made me very emotional.
Without a shadow of a doubt, the single most important thing that film music has to do is communicate an emotion to the audience immediately. And one criticism that has been thrown at film music year after year after year is that it seems like it's significantly behind the times. Meaning, for instance, when Schoenberg was writing 12-tone music in 1911 or 13 or 16 or whatever it was, it took Hollywood 40 years before they caught on to it, and it appeared for the first time in a film called The Cobweb. It was written by Leonard Rosenman. So, why is that? It's because Hollywood cannot start utilizing a vocabulary or a specific sort of melody in their film scores. Composers can't until they can be assured that it's going to get a certain response from the audience. And so that means that it has to have been around and consumed in the musical vernacular of the American public or the world at large long enough so they know it will generate a certain reaction. There's different melodies. If a composer is doing his job right, will immediately indicate a different sort of an emotional response from the audience. I guess it could be said that there's a lot of repetitiveness, or for instance, this last movie I just completed, Spider-Man 3, every single one of the characters has a motive or a melody of his or her own, and not only do they have a motive or a melody for themselves, but sometimes multiple depending upon what state of mind they're in. In many ways, Spider-Man 3, the thing I was worried the most about in that movie, that it was going to be cluttered with too many themes, and as a consequence, fragment the experience for the audience. Because as you know, really great film scores really only need 1, 2, or 3 themes to hold the whole thing together. Then it's the composer's job to put those themes to a series of variations. One of the wonderful things that music for movies does is that it often represents the unspoken thoughts of that character.
Well, Eric Schmidt needs to have a lot of funny thoughts because he writes music for Warner Brothers cartoons.
I've done a lot of my work for Warner Brothers. And the stuff that we've written, we try and do in the classic Warner Brothers style, which was Carl Stalling, who wrote all the great Bugs Bunny cartoons. That was his only big job. He wrote like 500 of those. And so our job is to write stylistically the way he does. There are three main elements that go into the music for when we write a cartoon in that style. One is we use a lot of classical pieces, because classical melodies are fun. And then if you take them and you speed them up 150% and you add some little wackadoodles, they become way wicked funny. All right? Kill the wabbit, kill the wabbit. They do whole operas, and Tom and Jerry did a great thing about playing a Chopin piano concerto. Cool stuff, where you're mixing contemporary, funny, cartoony elements with a classical piece of serious music. So we use a lot of adaptation of the classicals. Whenever there's a plane flying or anyone take off, we always played Ride of the Valkyrie or something like that. And I worked on a series where each episode we were in a different place in the world. So wherever we were, I would go there musically. So we were in Russia, I did Tchaikovsky and Borodin, and it ties into the production, the cartoon. And being classical pieces, they all have great melodies, because most of them are from operas. You got to have a pretty good melody to have a successful opera, I think. So that was the first tool. Our second tool was public domain tunes or Americana tunes. Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain, Red River Valley. Whenever anybody is cooking any food, someone's in the kitchen with Dinah, someone's in the kitchen. And you do that in every single cartoon. Or if someone's drinking something or he looks like he's getting a little drunk, how dry I am, how wet. It communicates. If you were watching the cartoon, you'd know after a while, oh, that tune's going on, this is what's happening, right? And it's a funny thing, right? And then in the first Warner Brothers cartoons, they used a lot of popular songs from that era. And then the last element is what we call the cartoony elements. Exactly, if someone's falling down, you got the pattern of it falling down, and then a bar before they hit, the piano goes, and the snare drum goes, pop. If someone gets hit on the head and you see the stars, you got a vibraphone. The colors of your orchestration come out of the visually what you see. If someone is running across water, that should be a different color than someone running across a plank of wood.
Oh, well, that's all fine, I hear you cry. But what about lyrics?
Ask Richard Niles.
Well, I asked the winner of 3 Grammy Awards, the respected composer-arranger Jimmy Haskell, and he told me that the melodies he wrote in his arrangement of Simon and Garfunkel's Old Friends were dictated by the lyrics.
Melodies that I hear when they're presented to me, I get an instant feeling about it. When it's a song with lyrics, I'm more concerned, does the melody work well with the lyric? All of a sudden, like magic, the counter melody pops into my head. The words affected me. I like enhancing the drama of the words.
Whoa there, Trigger. Well, if lyrics affect the melody, what about harmony? Well, here's a question. Who's so talented and good-looking that Herbie Hancock asked for his help when he was doing a reharmonization of the Stevie Wonder song, I Just Called to Say I Love You? Well, the answer is that talented and good-looking pianist Greg Fillinganes.
Very simple melody. The regular way goes like this. No New Year's Day to celebrate. Oh, I don't remember all the lyrics. What to give away. And then it goes, I just called to say I love you. Very simple and very to the point. Now, we slowed it down a little bit, and I'll give you a bit of what happened. No New Year's Day to celebrate. No, to give away. Leads away there. And it does every day.
Nice voice, huh? But what about singing in harmony? Now that's really just a bunch of melodies all at the same time. London vocal group The Sisters of Harmony showed me how they transformed the children's song This Old Man with their decidedly strapless harmonies.
Platinum rings, shiny things. I like anything that blings. Wrap me up in chocolate, crystal in my glass, Chardonnay can kiss my
Ask Richard Niles about melody and rhythm. While throbbing young piano star Gwilym Simcock took this tune Isotope by Joe Henderson and did this to it using polyrhythms, 2 rhythms at the same time. It may be impossible to play, but it sure is fun to listen to. Well, forgive me for being blunt, but I am fabulous. If only the BBC appreciated me the way I do. Oh well, I know you listeners will be back for the dramatic final part of this series where we explore the performance of melody and all who sail in her.
What is melody?
Thanks to our brave guests, to Daisy Shute and the equally muscular Gwilym Simcock for performing on my amusing little theme tune. Thanks to the low notes of my production assistant Yannick Gwizdala, my hard-pressed mixing engineer Peter Dale, and to David Morley and all those decorative people at Above the Title for producing in such an executive manner. If you get lonely for my voice, go to the BBC website and you can hear it all again online. If some of you still want to know what melody is, tune in next weekend.
Ask Richard Niles.
Good idea.
Richard Niles on the radio, check it.